Today we're gonna get into my cuckoo Atlanta Hawks, and I'm gonna tell you guys why I believe they absolutely murdered this NBA offseason and why they should be looked at as a real contender in this year's Eastern Conference. But before we get started on that, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and to continue to support our channel. Cuckoo! My Atlanta Hawks. That's right. We're going to talk about them. And they absolutely murdered this offseason. Without a doubt, the Atlanta Hawks absolutely murdered this offseason. This is awesome, man. The Atlanta Hawks did their thing this offseason. You know, look, I said this about a month and a half ago that I thought the Hawks needed to kill it this offseason. This was a big offseason for this Atlanta Hawks franchise. And you look at the state of the Eastern Conference. You look at the fact that the Indiana Pacers made the NBA Finals. And in my eyes, I thought kind of presented the Hawks a real blueprint to kind of duplicate their run this upcoming season the way the Pacers did this past season. And I thought the Hawks saw the opportunity, man. They did pretty much everything that I wanted them to do, man. Like, They absolutely nailed this offseason in a variety of ways. And, for those of y'all that, haven't known already, they traded for Kristaps Porzingis from the Boston Celtics. They traded George Niang, and they gave up the 22nd pick. And so they get Porzingis. And then they signed Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the Minnesota Timberwolves to a 4-year, $65 million. No, let me tell you that. 4-year, $62 million contract. And so they get him. They also signed Luke Kennard from the Memphis Grizzlies. They give him a 1-year deal worth $11 million. Oh, and by the way, they actually fleeced the New Orleans Pelicans when they traded down from 13 to 23 in the NBA draft, and they acquired the Pelicans/Milwaukee Bucks first-round pick. By the way, unprotected in next year's NBA draft. By the way, a draft that many people are projecting to be maybe the best draft in years. And so you actually get that pick. And so, again, man, just a marvelous job by Ansi Salah and this Atlanta Hawks franchise for accomplishing all of these moves. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. They also drafted Asa Newell, with that 23rd pick in the NBA draft, who looked pretty good in the summer league. He averaged 13 points, 8 rebounds, shot 51% from the field, shot 42% from three. He actually, looked good in summer league. And so that has to be mentioned as well. And so, like I said, man, kudos to the Atlanta Hawks for accomplishing what they needed to accomplish this offseason. But I want to get into all of these moves individually. And I got to start with the Kristaps Porzingis move. Again, and I think I said this in a previous episode, but if he can just stay healthy, he is so perfect for what this Atlanta Hawks team needs, as a rim protecting center, but also a guy that can stretch the floor, shoot the three ball. He shot 40% from three over the past 3 years. And so you get a guy like Porzingis, who's one of the best floor stretching bigs in the league. He can protect the rim. He can also score in the post. He's become one of the best low post scoring bigs in the league over the past 3 years. And so you got a guy like that who, again, is going to take a lot of pressure off Trae Young, a lot of pressure off Jalen Johnson, Risacher, Dyson Daniels, Onyeka, everybody, and so you got a guy like that who can stretch the floor. Like I said, the lane is going to be open for Trae Young to attack the basket, and for everyone else, Jalen Johnson and Dyson and Risacher, all these guys who attack the rim. So you get a guy like that. He can also score in the post. He can create his own shot in the post a little bit as well. This is a guy that averages around 20 a game. And so getting him was huge. And then, again, you get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's arguably the best gettable free agent on the market. As far as guys that was most likely to change teams, it was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And here's the thing, and what I really like about Nickeil Alexander, what I really enjoy about the process of getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker, It's the fact that Trae Young actually recruited him. It's Trae Young actually went out of his way and said, you know what, man? We need a guy like Nickeil Alexander-Walker on this team. And you know what? We also need a guy like Luke Kennard on this team. I want to do my best and help this franchise out and get both of these individuals because I know how much they fit what we want to try to do. And so kudos to Trae Young for actually getting out of his way and recruiting Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, just a guy that's a prototypical. He can shoot the three ball. He shot 38 and 39% from three respectively over the past 2 years. This is a guy he can defend. He gets blocks, steals, does a lot of the winning player stuff that you want your role players to do. So you get him. He can also secondary play make a little bit. He can handle the ball a little bit. He can play a little point guard. And so I really like that move as well. You get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and also you get Luke Kennard, who's one of the best shooters in the league, man. This is a guy that's shot over 40% from three over the past few years, including this past year with the Grizzlies. And so this is a guy that can shoot the ball. And also he can secondary play make. He can play a little point guard and create and pick and roll and all of that good stuff. And so just huge additions to this team. And it as a result of all of these moves that the Hawks have made, it makes the team so much better and more versatile. And this is what makes me most excited about the Hawks this coming season. It's just how balanced of a roster that this team has, right? You have, your rim protector and floor spacing versatile big at Porzingis. You got your 3-and-D wing defender who can guard 1s, 2s, and 3s in Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You got a guy in Luke Kennard who can play the 1 and the 2, who can shoot the ball at an elite level, and he can create out a pick and roll a little bit. And then you look at your starting lineup, or guys that you probably would think would be your starters. You got Trae Young, you got Dyson Daniels, who also should improve over his first year as a starter. You got Zaccharie Risacher, who was last year's #1 pick. Well, y'all know what he's a guy we definitely are excited about, who should improve. You got Jalen Johnson, who's finally going to be healthy, coming from his torn labrum. And you have Onyeka Okongwu, who I thought played outstanding as a starting center after he got named the starter after January. And so, all of this is just exciting, man. All of this movement that the Hawks have done is exciting, which kind of brings me to this point that I'm also going to make regarding the Atlanta Hawks. And that's this. I've been an Atlanta Hawks fan for 25 years. I was an Atlanta Hawks fan really towards the end of the Dikembe Mutombo, Steve Smith era. I started to become a fan when they traded for Sharif Abdul-Rahim, and they had Jason Terry, and then they were able to get Glenn Bit Dog Robinson, right? I was a fan starting around that time, and the team wasn't very good, but I became a fan, right? And so then a couple of years later, they blew that team up, and then they started to go on their rebuild, and they get Mike Woodson as their head coach, and they drafted Josh Smith and Josh Childress, and they get Joe Johnson in free agency, and then they get Marvin Williams and Al Horford, and they had a nice little string of consecutive winning seasons, right? And so they had that, and then they blew that team up, and then it was Al Horford, Paul Millsap, Jeff Teague, Kyle Korver. It was that team, and then they blew that team up. And then it was Dwight Howard. I don't get me started on that. But they had Dwight Howard for a season, and then they blew that team up. Then they had Trae Young. And here we are, right? We're entering year 8 of the Trae Young era. But I say all that to say that in my 25 years I've been an Atlanta Hawks fan, this is comfortably the best offseason of my entire Atlanta Hawks fandom. And I can confidently say that this is the best that I have ever felt when it comes to where the state of this Atlanta Hawks team is at. When you look at the state of the roster and how talented and young and versatile that it is, when you look at the front office, when you look at the fact that this franchise went into this offseason with a real plan in place and targeted the specific type of players that this team has needed. They targeted defenders, size, shooting, depth, all of it. And you also look at the fact that this franchise finally actually has a real vision. This team actually has a real long-term vision of what this team could be in the long term. And that excites me. It really does. It excites, as an Atlanta Hawk fan, I have never felt better about where this team is at long term. I have never felt better. I didn't feel this way when we had Joe Johnson and Josh Smith and Al Horford and Marvin Williams. I didn't quite feel this way when we had Al Horford and Paul Millsap and Jeff Teague. I didn't feel this way earlier when we drafted Trae Young. But when you look at where this team is at right now at this very moment, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the Atlanta Hawks could actually win the Eastern Conference over the next year or two. Like, that could happen. Like, I can actually see a world where the Atlanta Hawks win the Eastern Conference and go to an NBA Finals. And who knows? You go to an NBA Finals and all of a sudden you could win the NBA championship. And I actually feel that over the next 3 to 4 years, it's possible. It could be possible with these Atlanta Hawks. I mean, I got to tell you, it's a beautiful feeling. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm feeling excited because I see a new energy with these Atlanta Hawks and what they've done this offseason, and quite frankly, what they've done over the past year. I mean, this is exciting, man. Like, you just flash back to last season, to about 18 months ago. 18 months ago, things were looking kind of bleak for my Hawks. They were. You know, I was listening to podcasts and reading articles about people saying, oh, Atlanta should trade Trae Young and keep DeJounte because, well, you could get more for Trae Young in a trade. We got to move off Trae Young. That's all I heard. That's all I heard from a lot of people, from a lot of writers and podcasters. Is that Hawks had to move Trae Young. But you know what? I never bought into it. I said, you know what? No, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to these blog boys and podcasters. And I just said, no, we got to keep Trae Young. We can make this work. And that they should move DeJounte Murray, which is exactly what they did. They moved DeJounte Murray. They got Dyson Daniels and 2 first-round picks from the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, they had a little bit of luck, too, because they ended up getting the number 1 pick in the draft, and they end up drafting Zaccharie Risacher, who's that prototypical wing that you need. And so you get Zaccharie Risacher, you get Trae Young. You get Dyson Daniels. You roll into this past season with kind of a retooling year and trying to see what your team would look like. And quite frankly, the team was looking pretty good this past year until Jalen Johnson gets injured and got tore his labrum, and all of a sudden it went down the rails. But you know what? We saw the vision this past season of what this Atlanta Hawks team would be. And look, they went 40-42. They lost in the play-in. But you saw the vision. You saw Trae Young and Dyson Daniels and Risacher, and you saw what Jalen Johnson was looking like before he got injured. He looked like a borderline all-star. And you saw Nickeil Alexander-Walker got better after he was named the starter. And so you fast forward to this offseason, and what do? You trade the 22nd pick, and you trade George Niang. You get Kristaps Porzingis from the Celtics because the Celtics want to save money and get under the second apron. And so you get Porzingis, who fits perfectly with this team as a big man who can stretch the floor and block shots and score in the post and become that real threatening scorer, right? And then you get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and then who's one of the best defenders in the league, who can shoot the three ball and just provide just immense value to this roster as a wing 6'5" dude who can just defend and hit threes and make plays on offense. And then you get Luke Kennard, and by the way, along the way, you fleece the New Orleans Pelicans in that trade, that draft night trade, in which you get that pick from next year, that unprotected Pelicans Bucks poo platters pick swap or whatever it is. You get that unprotected pick, which in my opinion could be top 10. Was probably going to be a top 10 pick next season in next year's NBA draft. So you get that too, and you just breed excitement. Oh, and by the way, speaking of the Pelicans, it also has to be said that as an Atlanta sports fan, I'm actually going to be rooting against both New Orleans teams to go a combined 0-99, which means I'm going to be rooting for the Pelicans to go 0-82, and I'm going to be rooting for the New Orleans Saints to go 0-17. And so 82 plus 17 is 99. And so I'm going to be rooting for the Pelicans and Saints combined to go combined 0-99. I just want to say that. And so I'm going to be rooting. So that's going to be fun as well. And so, I mean, you look at all of these factors, man, and what the Hawks have done, and it just, I'm smiling, man. I'm feeling great. I'm loving where my team is at, man. I'm loving it. I see a vision. I'm looking at this roster, man, that we have right now with Onyeka, Okongwu, and Jalen, and Dyson, and Risacher, and Trae, and Porzingis, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Luke Kennard, and we drafted Asa Newell, and we got Mohamed Gay, and Kobe Buffkin. Like, I'm just a man. I'm loving it, man. I'm loving this. I'm loving this team. I'm loving this roster. I'm loving what we have shaped up in. It kind of brings me to my other point I want to make about this offseason is finally the Atlanta Hawks have actually put together a perfect roster around Trae Young. A roster that actually complements his skill sets. And it complements the things that Trae does well as a playmaker and a guy that can make plays and score a little bit. And we all know he's one of the best passers in the league. And so you got a roster that complements the things that he does well, and they can support the things that he doesn't do well. You know, we all know Trae's a small guard who's not a particularly good defender. Well, guess what? You got all these athletes. You know, Porzingis as a rim protector who's 7'2", and Jalen Johnson who's 6'9", who's an athlete who can guard on the perimeter and provide the weak side rim protection, and Zaccharie Risacher, who's 6'9" and 6'10", 6'9 and a half, 6'10", who's an athlete. And Dyson Daniels is 6'8", right? And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who's 6'5", 6'6", as a long athlete. And Onyeka, who's 6'9", 6'10", as a athlete who can switch a little bit. I mean, look at this defensive versatility around Trae Young. And this is the perfect type of roster that you want to complement your star point guard. This is it. And you drafted Asa Newell, who's also a 6'8", 6'9" athlete as well, who can run the floor and jump and block shots and finish around the rim and dunk. You know, and he can also give Trae Young that live threat on the offensive end. And so, man, this is perfect, man. This is awesome. This is awesome to see from these Atlanta Hawks, man. And hey, man, I'm just going to say this, man, right now, man, but the Kaka movement is coming. The Kaka movement, the Atlanta Hawk movement is on the rise. Is on the brink, man. It's rising. It's coming. It's rising. The Caw Atlanta Hawk movement is on the up and up. It's rising. The bandwagon is filling up. People are seeing the vision of this basketball team. And you see the accolades and the praise that people are giving this franchise, and people are starting to see the vision of what this Atlanta Hawks team is going to be moving forward. People getting on board, man. And people, and all you Atlanta Hawks naysayers and doubters and critics, and even if you're a fan and you still have some questions, y'all need to get on board with these Atlanta Hawks, because we're coming. We on the rise, baby. We on the up and up. We coming. And we on the way, man. We get on this bandwagon, baby. Get on it. Get on it. Dyson Daniels, Risacher, Jalen Johnson, Porzingis, Onyeka, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Luke Kennard, Asa Newell, Trae Young. Get on the bandwagon, baby. Because we on the way up, man. We on up and up, man. We on the way. This is shaping up to be something special that we got going on here, man. Get on the bandwagon. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, as y'all can see, man, I'm excited. I'm hyped up. I think this coming year is gonna be special. And man, I'm excited, man. Like I'm excited. I'm excited at what's to come when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks, man. Like I'm excited. I love what we've done. And you know, man, look, I'm ready. And look, look, the only thing left now is like the Trae Young extension. Like as of this recording, you know, Trae Young hasn't, you know, the extension hasn't happened quite yet. But you know what, man, I'm convinced that we're gonna get Trae to sign an extension. Look, I don't know if it's gonna be for the max or if it's gonna be a little bit less. I don't know, but we that's gonna take care of itself. But in the meantime, when it comes to these Atlanta Hawks, I'm loving what the Hawks have done this offseason, you know, between Porzingis and Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard and the Pelicans trade. And by the way, man, I got to get back on that Pelicans trade. I got to get back on it. The fact that the Atlanta Hawks was able to get that unprotected Pelicans pick is just a stroke of genius. It's a stroke of genius by Asa Newell for the Hawks to get that pick. It's just a stroke of genius because it gives the Hawks some real direction and flexibility and just whatever they want. Like if that pick could be a real game changer as far as pushing the Hawks forward to actually becoming a real live championship contender. Imagine if the Atlanta Hawks, the Hawks could win 47 to 50 games this coming year, and they could win the lottery next season. Imagine if that's the reality. Even if they don't win the lottery, imagine if that pick is top 3. Imagine the possibility of Atlanta adding a Cam Boozer, a Daryl Peterson, or a AJ DeBonsa to this core mix. I mean, oh my God, man. I mean, you talking about something special. Come, you know, that could happen. Or maybe they trade that pick and then they get a superstar. You know, and so that could happen as well. But it gives the Hawks options when you look at that Pelicans pick. I mean, it's just, man, like that Pelicans pick is a game changer for the Atlanta Hawks. You know, and like I said, man, it's just it's exciting times to be an Atlanta Hawks fan right now. It's just is. And everybody needs to get on board with what's happening with these Atlanta Hawks, man. Everybody needs to get on board because this is gonna be something special that we're gonna be witnessing moving forward. You know, these Atlanta Hawks are coming, baby, and I can't wait. But hey, man, that's all I have for today. You know, and you know, look, I'll love y'all to, you know, hit me up in the comments, man, and Y'all agree with my thoughts on these Atlanta Hawks, man? I mean, yeah. What y'all thoughts on it, man? I would love to hear y'all and hear y'all thoughts. But like I said, man, that's all I have for today. And as an Atlanta Hawk fan, this is beautiful. It's what I wanted, man. I'm hyped. Let's go. But that's all I have for today, and I'll catch you guys in the next episode.